Hey guys, how's it going? So I would like to share a few things with you today. As you can see, the topic of this video is mainly railroad tunnels and the curious castle-like architecture surrounding many of them, as well as the claimed time frame. I would also like to compare these to some very interesting items that appear in books from the 1600s, which show the ruins and architecture that already existed at that time. Again, my purpose is not necessarily to figure out who built all of this stuff throughout the world, or even exactly when it was built. My purpose is to emphasize that certain items already existed in the 1600s, as you will see later on, including tunnels. Now, I would like to stress that this is not a conspiracy video. My point in this video is valid whether the mainstream narrative of our history is true or whether it is a complete fiction. Either way, the same conclusion can be drawn, which is that comparatively speaking, our current society is lacking, and that is to say the least. Let me quickly explain what I mean, and then I will continue on with the analysis of the old books and these tunnels. And just like the prisons and the fantastic stories surrounding them, many of the fancy-looking tunnels come with a ghost story or some other legend. So, the mainstream history claim is that within a span of about 50 or 75 years in the 1800s, starting at about 1830, before electricity, before power tools, cars, and trucks, with just horses and buggies, shovels, and sweat and tears, mankind was able to construct, and this is worldwide, the following items at least. We fully built out cities with homes, offices, and the required city planning and infrastructure. We built massive government buildings, such as Capitol buildings, post offices, utilities, all with extravagant, ornate art and architecture. We built megachurches and cathedrals. We built prisons on a massive scale, as I just showed in my previous video. We built huge insane asylums. Again, some crazy architecture, and pardon the pun. We built railroads, and this includes mining all of the iron ore, blast furnaces to make the vast amounts of iron tracks required, the logging industry for the thousands of railroad ties, the transporting and laying of thousands of miles of iron tracks, using horses and buggies again, and constructing all of the bridges, blasting through valleys, making hundreds if not thousands of tunnels through all types of mountains and terrains and rocks, and again, worldwide. We also dug quarries and processed and transported all of the very heavy stones that were needed to build all of these amazing buildings. Again, no trucks or trains, just horses and buggies, at least until the railroads were completed. Next, we have the construction of the factories and warehouses involved in all of these civil works undertakings, organization of the supply chains and markets that would have to exist to support all of these projects. And all of this amazing, highly skilled, stunning architecture was done before, and let me repeat, before widespread electricity, compulsory government education, the Federal Reserve, even before the income tax that everyone loves so much. Yeah, this was all done before the government decided to help us with all of these laws and social programs, before our society was plagued with divorce, broken homes, Hollywood, Disney, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And let's not forget all of the wars that the United States was also fighting at this time. So the USA was simultaneously fighting non-stop wars in the 1800s, while at the same time constructing all of these amazing buildings, complete cities in fact, tunnels, bridges, mines, quarries, the list goes on and on. So let's just look at the wars that the US fought in the 1800s. I'll have to go fast because there are so many, I may not mention all of them, but was very painful. But wait, there's more. So also in the 1800s, many of our big cities just magically burned to the ground. The granite and brick masterpieces, all of these amazing buildings, burned to the ground in the 1800s. For example, let me just read to you a short list of some fires. Painful again. Painful again. What a travesty. I mean, could it be any more obvious that our history has been erased? But that's conspiracy talk. I can't have conspiracy talk today. So, what a travesty. However, as ridiculous as all of this sounds, it really doesn't matter whether the mainstream history is accurate or not. The resulting commentary on our current society and state of affairs is the same. If it's a lie, it's a lie. We can just toss out one more aspect of government-sponsored history. Or let's say it's 100% accurate. We did all of this in the 1800s. In that case, what does that say about where we are in modern society? Instead of building huge, solid, decorative, and artistic civil works, we build dollar stores and Starbucks. Instead of families staying close and parents teaching their kids useful skills, including how to farm and build things, the current slave economy takes kids from their parents, starting with daycare, so both parents can work for the corporation. Divorce is rampant, drug and alcohol abuse are rampant, everyone is herded into hero worship in sports, entertainment, out-of-control materialism. Creative art and architecture are replaced by dollar stores, fail videos, and look at me, Facebook and Twitter. Parents slave away so they can buy new iPhones while children and the elderly are put into institutions. So again, even if the mainstream history timeline is accurate, it still means that our current society is not headed in the right direction, at least not in my opinion. So, back to trains. Let's take a look at some images from a book published in 1671, and I'll be sure to put the links in the description. This book, written by Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit, talks about the layout of Latium, the region of Italy that includes Rome. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the history of this region. I would simply like to focus on the scope of the cities and the architecture present at that time, and the ruins, but mainly the depiction of tunnels. Somehow, the ancients were well aware of the underground or subterranean canals worldwide, in addition to the whirlpools and currents in the ocean. Vast amounts of knowledge were obviously known. So, let's quickly look at this Lacus Albanus, or Lago Albano. And guess what else is here? The Vatican Observatory now sits up on the hillside here, but that's for another video. So what I would like to draw your attention to are the existing tunnels, and these appear to be natural subterranean tunnels or canals. And what they did was to place decorative arches or castle-like structures on the openings. Some of these even went right through castles. And these are just like our modern tunnels, or the facades of our modern tunnels. Look at all these. It could be that, just like the Panama Canal, unscrupulous individuals simply cleared out existing natural subterranean tunnels, with the original castle-like architecture still appearing on some of the tunnels. And like all of the other ancient architecture, we seem to be systematically removing all evidence. They will actually build a new tunnel next to an old tunnel and then close it down or just let it waste away. And so we have enough information to at least ask the question, did we just take over and repurpose these old natural canals and then claim that we built train tunnels? That would make the timeline more realistic, but again, either way, the resulting commentary on our current society is not good. And we see the same thing in the nearby lake Nemi. Check out those tunnels. Now let's look at a few more pictures from this book just so you can understand the scale and magnitude and the magnificence of this ancient architecture and the build out of these cities. Again, look how humans lived over 400 years ago, at least as reflected in art and architecture. If you want clues as to how a society lived, look at what they lived in. Look at their houses and their cities. We look like idiotic savages compared to this, but we have iPhones. Anyways, but the good news is that this actually gives us hope. If we lived like this once, maybe we can turn this ship around and aim for a better society in the future. One that is not so negative, one that doesn't celebrate the misery of our fellow men and women. I'm sure they had their fair share of problems, but again, you can't dispute the quality of the structures that the ancients lived in. The ingenuity, the style, the art, the class. This stuff just brings a smile to my face, and again I stress, even if the history is exactly what they say it is, this is still a reason to have hope, and more importantly, to recognize and admit that the way our society is evolving, the direction we are headed, is not so good looking. It is downright dangerous, negative, and evil. We must seek balance. So, enough of that book. Let's just quickly look at a few pics from another book called Mundus Subterraneus, or The Subterranean World. Another crazy book dealing with all kinds of science and geography. There are a couple of items I would like to point out. First, notice all of the illustrations and mapping of various subterranean tunnels or canals. Obviously well known again. And these are accurate. You can confirm the existence of the canals at this lake in addition to the whirlpools listed in the various maps off the coast of Sicily and Norway. I'm not sure why it's a mystery, seeing as it was well understood 400 years ago, at least the location and description of these items. And again, we have a couple of tunnels with ornate architecture around the openings. And curiously, there is a pyramid in the background of this one. It's very nice. And another feature of these books is that they show massive hollowed out caverns in mountains where the waters converge with waterfalls, rivers, whirlpools, very curious large hollow areas inside mountains. And they even show a giant ladder. Strangely enough, in my research for this video, I stumbled onto something very interesting in this regard, and basically it was the fact that in addition to the CERN facility, which you may be familiar with, we also have about 11 what are called deep underground neutrino experimental labs. And basically these are along the same lines as anything that has to do with NASA. I probably don't have time to get into it right now, but let's just say that they have huge budgets to study magical space science, again, at our expense, deep in these large openings in mountains or old mine shafts in which they have built their Wizard of Oz collider type devices to what I think is to just launder money from the people under the guise of science and technology. I stumbled on this when I was looking at the Frejus rail tunnel between Italy and France. And I found the Modane Underground Laboratory, or the Frejus Underground Laboratory. And this is in the Frejus Tunnel, and it is an offshoot with a big opening that they use for science. And looking at the pictures for these neutrino labs, again, they exist worldwide, it reminds me exactly of NASA and the ISS shenanigans they have going on. And just like prisons, the tunnels were all supposedly designed, excavated, and built in the 1800s. And just like the fancy prisons, many of the fancy tunnels come with ghost stories or other fantasy tales. For instance, the Clayton Tunnel comes with its accident story. Clayton Tunnel had a signal at each end, and it was the failure of the signalman to ensure that the signal had returned to danger that led to the worst ever accident on that line. And the Guoliang Tunnel has a funny construction story. A group of villagers led by Shen Mingxin made plans in 1972 to carve a road inside the side of the mountain. They sold their livestock to raise funds to buy tools and materials. 13 villagers began the project, with one dying during construction. And without access to power tools, they undertook construction mostly with hammers and chisels. I guess they never ate or slept. At the most difficult stage, the tunnel progressed at a rate of 1 meter every 3 days. It is 1.2 kilometers long, 5 meters tall, and 4 meters wide. The tunnel opened to traffic on May 1st, 1977. Its creation has turned the village into a tourist attraction. The area has also been used as a film location. Yeah, it was probably dug by Hollywood, knowing those freaks. And the Hoosac Tunnel has several tales of accidents and ghosts. The Hoosac Tunnel in Massachusetts is an interesting piece of civil engineering. When it opened in 1876, it was the longest tunnel in North America. Kept the title for 40 years, and the second longest in the world. Yet the workplaces of the 19th century aren't remembered for their safety culture, and those involving explosives inside mountains were worse than most. By the time it was finished, Hoosac Tunnel had very much earned its nickname, the Bloody Pit. And it goes on. The worst of the many accidents during construction occurred October 17, 1867. Fumes leaking from a gas light met a candle, sending a wave of flame and debris down the main shaft. 13 people died, and when a worker was lowered to investigate, he emerged sputtering and saying, "No hope, no hope." The shaft flooded and bodies floated to the top. They were among 195 people killed during the 24-year project. And tales of ghosts began even before the tunnel was finished. In 1865, 3 explosives engineers, known as Brickman, Nash, and Kelly, were working in the tunnel. Kelly set off one charge too early, burying his colleagues. Kelly disappeared not long afterwards and was found strangled to death in the tunnel. The murder was never solved. It may have been friends of Brinkman and Nash seeking vengeance, but many workers believed it was the spirits of the dead men that had done it. There you go, more fantastic stories. So, just to recap, we have yet again another very interesting aspect of our history, and that would be the tunnels that exist worldwide and which were supposedly constructed in the mid-1800s. My purpose here was simply to look at the claims of exactly what was built and when it was built, using logic and reason, and taking into account the entirety of what was going on at the same time in the 1800s, namely the construction of every modern city, government buildings, churches, universities, factories, prisons, insane asylums, ships, railroad cars, railroad tracks, the laying of thousands of miles of railroad tracks, roads, digging mines, digging tunnels, constructing bridges, fighting wars, fighting fires, and introducing electricity at the end of the century. Not to mention the building of huge temporary buildings for the many World's Fairs held in various cities at the end of the 19th century. It's amazing stuff. But like I said, this is not a conspiracy video. Even if we accept the mainstream narrative, that still proves the point that our current state of society, the state of the human race, compared to what was going on in antiquity, is headed in the wrong direction. There is entirely too much negativity and deception going on. If you don't like the word deception as relates to our rulers, you can just use incompetence. It's time to wake up, look around, and admit that we are on the wrong path. We need to stop looking for a hero politician to save us, and we need to start acting like humans, not savages. We must seek balance. Peace, and thank you very much for watching.
We passed up on the stair. We spoke of was and when. Although I wasn't there, he said I was his friend, which gave us some surprise. I spoke into his eyes. I thought you died alone a long, long time ago. I know, not me. Lost control. Your and shook his hand and made my way back home. I searched for home and land. For years and years I roamed. I gazed a gazeless stare at all the millions here. We must have died alone a long, long time ago. Who knows? Not me. We never lost control. Your face to face with the man who sold the world. Who knows?